Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I'm going to give everyone like 30 more seconds to pop in, but I have a feeling we're going to have people popping in and out. But thank you so much for being here. And this is How to Fail at AI by Ignoring UX. This webinar is set to run for about an hour. So just in case you're clearing your schedule, we'll have some time for Q&A at the very end. So be prepared for that. And then we're going to explore the pitfalls, the patterns, and the smarter ways forward when it comes to integrating AI into your new and existing products and processes. My name is Heather Stevens, and I work for Bitovi. Bitovi is an end-to-end product development consulting agency specializing in consulting, training, and building open source tools. Now, I want to introduce you to the real stars of the show, your experts for today. We have Levi Myers and Mick McGrath. Levi Myers is the director of product design at Bitovi. He's been leading teams for 25 years, and his experience spans consultancies, digital agencies, and freelance work. He's worked with clients from multinationals to startups across industries, from finance to professional sports. And Mick McGrath is Bitovi's director of AI. He has more than 20 years of experience leading teams and leveraging AI and machine learning for intelligent automation. He has advised teams for some of the world's biggest companies on effectively and intelligently automating enterprise processes. So let's get into the good stuff. Levi, I'm going to turn to you first. I want you to chat with us about some good and bad examples of companies incorporating AI into their UX. So Levi, I'm going to kick things over to you.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think this is a great way to kick it off. Like, what are the things that really matter? And I'm going to start here with a negative example, which is LinkedIn. At the end of 2023, they introduced this like AI-powered prompt questions that would appear at the bottom of posts, and it immediately got a lot of really negative feedback, with people sharing especially stupid suggested prompts like this one on screen here, of like um, it's just like, what does pumpkin spice latte matter to me, with somebody who is making a post that was about pumpkin spice season starting off. So even if the prompts were better, though, it would have been a flop, because it's ignoring what users actually want. Most people are coming to LinkedIn to see thoughtful posts. LinkedIn is with this functionality kind of laying bare the prospect that you could be coming in just seeing AI talking with AI. And it's devaluing the entire reason that a lot of people would engage with the content on LinkedIn in the first place. So ultimately, LinkedIn ended up dropping that content, that functionality, but not before it had damaged users' perceptions of the quality of the content that they can find on LinkedIn. And then if we flip the script, talk about a great example, we can look over at Netflix. With Netflix, their AI recommendations, from what they've released and what analysts have found, it drives an astounding 80% of what people watch. So obviously, the quality of the recommendations plays a huge part in like how much people are using it. And people talk about, Netflix knows me better than I know myself, kind of thing. But it's also addressing this core desire from users, that they want that instant gratification of sit down and find something to watch immediately. So with Netflix, it's kind of that perfect example that they're starting with a business goal, that they want to drive engagement and keep people watching. They're aligning it with that user need of people wanting to be able to quickly find something that's intriguing that they can watch, and then they're powering it with an AI tool that does its job just really well.
Can fail spectacularly when it doesn't solve a real user need. But I know there's a lot more nuance to that, right? Of like the actual pitfalls that companies fall into when they're trying to implement AI. So Mick, I want to chat with you about the concept of tech for tech's sake, and kind of your thoughts on this and how it can really lead people down an ineffective path.
Yeah, so we've got like several of these examples queued up, as far as like ways that you can fail. So like if you like tech for tech's sake, mean it refers to like essentially throwing AI at the problem. Like if I have a really, really good technology, it's not necessarily a good idea to try to find a way to fit that into your needs. And so that's like the idea. And we see this a lot where like, okay, AI is happening, the industry is changing a lot. We're working, like, for example, with a big telecom company that has lots of different efforts because everybody, like, industrially, we're sort of incentivized to find ways to get value out of this. And a lot of the approaches involve like training base models, which are, you incur a lot of costs on GPUs, and like they might be still waiting on GPUs in order to train their sort of foundation model. And so this is like the hammer approach versus a more streamlined approach where we identify the actual user's needs, and identify the goals and KPIs for specific users to make their lives better and give them enhancements and things. And so then we sort of like really target that user and do swift to value, for that user. And another way, I guess, to reinforce this approach, and allow you to get even further, with the user-based approach is these tools don't have to, they don't have to like solve the entire problem all at once. You can sort of present a solution that is a checkpoint that gets them most of the way there. Like for whatever the thing is the users are doing or needing, maybe you're creating a proposal, maybe you're creating a design, whatever it is. Can you get a response? Like, can you get a flow that allows you to get much farther, and then you can just sort of like tweak that, and get it the last little bit of the way for quality and where you need it to be. So like you sort of set aside the need to like build a lot of the stuff if you just allow for that piece of it to be done and then bring it back into the human realm.
And Levi, I think you have a really good example of this that you kind of use as the director of our product design department, Adobe's AI remove tool.
Yeah, I mean that one's such a great example for this of it doesn't have to be perfect to start with. The AI removal tool that Adobe's using, and they've incorporated into a bunch of their products now. It's solving just such a core user need of, people just spend so much time cropping out backgrounds and stuff, and or removing an object in the screen, and the tool from Adobe, it just works. And it's not as good as a professional artist, but 80% of the people, it's getting them the whole way. For the rest of those people, it's getting them 80% of the way there and saving them a ton of time. I've spent so much of my life just like cropping out backgrounds and stuff. So, any tool that's going to be saving me that time, hey, I'm on board to try it. And theirs works pretty good. But yeah, I mean, this overall, this example, I think like the stuff I was talking about with LinkedIn, this is such a perfect example. Like they pushed for, oh, got to add AI. Let's fit it in somehow.
Yeah. So it sounds like Adobe obviously found a market fit for this remove tool, but can you talk about a little bit when a company is not assessing the market that they're trying to fit the needs of, and how that can kind of fail them?
Yeah. I mean, I think from the UX side of things, this is kind of the most obvious way to fail, is not having that market fit. And when I say market, I'm also referring, like, for internal products, it would be the teams and people that you're focused on internally. But overall, this is such a big one. We've seen stuff like a study of startups that showed 42% of startups failed because of a poor market fit. So there's just like such a big impact from this. And all of it really drives out from doing proper discovery work at the beginning of a project. First finding out, is there that shared aligned vision with the project goals? Can the goals be measured? Do we know what success is going to look like? And then, do we know who the users are? Do we know what those users need? Have we identified specific pain points that we can solve with this tool? And then, are we aware of how we can position this with our users so that they're going to be aware of it, they can use it? And then lastly, kind of tying in with that on the positioning side, do we know who our competitors are, what the alternatives are in the same space, and what we need to do that's going to be better than that. One example that I think of with this is Microsoft Cortana. So, they wanted to compete with, Siri, Alexa, but both of those come with a built-in ecosystem advantage. You got the iPhone, you've got the Echo in people's houses. And so Microsoft was left, well, I guess we'll tie it into Windows, but it wasn't something people were looking for there. It wasn't like they didn't have that killer use case to drive adoption, and that would pull people away from the systems that they were already using there. So it wasn't that Cortana was a bad product, but it was a bad product market fit.
I think when it comes to things like AI that people get really excited about, the other pitfall we can run into is that concept of unlimited scope. And Mick, as someone who is very excited about AI, how can you tell us a little bit about this and like how it's going to undermine all your projects?
Yeah, this one's tricky because it's all fun. Like this is just, it's very interesting. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do. And if you're like, let's do AI, then everything looks appealing because like it's all fun. And we have a workshop to help mitigate this tendency. And so the idea is, again, identify your users, try to do swift to value, and then you can iterate on quality. And then that way you can identify what your timelines are. You don't have this problem of like, okay, we have all these great ideas. Let's figure out how to integrate this one in and this one in and this one in. Like we have a very streamlined approach to get, to avoid this like risk of never releasing, right? So you might not ever get it out if you're just like trying to get all the features in. So this is a common problem in like software engineering just in general, and just AI is that on, it's way hyped up maybe, but it's a lot of interest in new things to be able to do. But anyway, like if you identify your users, it gives you a North Star and a path to carve through all of this madness and like, wonderful, interesting things that we can do, and really keeps you focused on what you're trying to do, which is like, attract your users and keep your users and make them happy and say good things about you, and that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, so like stay focused, stay streamlined, because it's just fun. It's just really cool stuff. Don't let it take over your, consume your
having those objectives just like nailed down of like, this is the piece we're going to focus on. Like Harvard Business Review did a study and showed that projects that had those really clearly defined objectives were 3.5 times more likely to succeed. And it's not that much work at the beginning of a project to nail that down for 3.5 times more likely to succeed.
Yeah. And another thing that comes into play with not just AI, but any kind of new technology is maybe the trust factor, right? Humans can be skeptical, and that's totally fair. But Levi, can you talk about, the lack of trust piece that might come when you're trying to implement AI?
Yeah, people definitely trust AI more if they know why it's giving the result that it's giving. That Netflix example is a great one. It's showing some of those recommendations is, here's why we recommended it, the show that was driving that. Not all the recommendations tie into something like that, but it builds trust that is like, okay, I can see what's the pathway to why they're putting this in front of me. But there's more to trust. Also, if like they can understand what they can expect for privacy. One example there, Notion AI, they headline like right off the bat. It's like front and center on their website that they don't train based on your data. So that's another good example of just like a small thing to help build some trust there. Another way to build trust, give the user some control. A small example there, most map apps, it's going to recommend a route, might show some nice info tying into the transparency side of things of how they got there. It's based on traffic or something like that. But almost all of them will have some way to give the user some control. You can choose a different route. You can force a route through a specific road or something like that. So that kind of thing helps to build trust as well. Getting consistent results is a big one. And it's a challenge with tools that are more probabilistic. But being able to do the same thing over and over again. So Adobe's remove tool, that's another great example there. Like if you use the tool, you don't expect to hit undo and do it again, and you get a different result there. And then the last of these examples is giving users the ability to give feedback, and that's something where most tools are doing pretty good on that. It's pretty ubiquitous to see some feedback mechanisms there. But a larger example that kind of ties all those together that wasn't working so well was IBM's Watson for Oncology. So that was a big rollout they're trying to do for cancer treatments with doctors and hospitals, insurance, and everything. And so doctors would be using it, and it would give them a recommendation, but it was just a total black box. They had no idea what was driving the recommendations. So the doctors were having a lot of trouble, trusting that recommendation. It wasn't upfront about the data privacy, which was particularly an issue as they tried to deploy globally, because there's privacy laws are different everywhere. Doctors also had really limited ability to customize the recommendations. So they'd get Watson's recommendation, but they couldn't adapt it. They couldn't add their own hospital guidelines or anything like that into it. So that was a miss on the trust side. On the consistency front, this was, I was talking about consistency of, trying to make sure it is consistent enough. This was maybe too consistent. They trained around one hospital worth of data. And Mick's going to talk about, data issues later, but they trained around one hospital. And so when they started rolling it out internationally and to other hospitals and everything, it was really skewed to that just one specific area. So it would do things like it would be recommending drugs that weren't even available in that area. And then on the feedback side, doctors had really limited ability to give feedback. And when they were providing it just, directly to IBM and stuff, they weren't feeling like that it was helping to retrain the system. They weren't seeing that improve over time. Ultimately, IBM ended up selling off Watson Health entirely, oncology and everything else, after losing hundreds of millions of dollars. So a real cautionary tale with that one.
I hope that somebody was very hesitant about, at least somebody was hesitant about like launching a global tool based on such a small representative data set.
No doubt.
There's some data scientists that probably knew that was not going to be a great idea. I wanted to speak, I guess, a little bit to this. So there's like there's like a process to gaining trust with AI, and so like speaking like to the last two here, the consistency and feedback. Your results might be garbage at first, and we can talk about that in a minute. But like your results for whatever your effort is, whatever your project is, your chatbot, your agent, whatever, where the results are just like not helpful at all. And so, but what that means is that you have a system set up that can give you results, even though they're bad. And so then there are techniques to like increase that quality. And so I think if you're able to deliver something that's somewhat helpful to begin with, and everybody's doing POCs these days, it's like a great place to start, but you deliver something that's somewhat helpful, and then you have a good feedback mechanism to like bring that in and change it, and then like make sure that your team, the team that's delivering the solution or the capability or whatever it is able to deliver on those improvements. And so like when they can take feedback, they can incorporate that into the process. They're not trying to boil the ocean with a big solution. They've got a way to incorporate this feedback, for the use cases you're trying to deliver for. And so another thing to help build trust is disclaimers and sources. So whenever you provide results in whatever AI system you're working with, you might have seen it if you work with ChatGPT and stuff, but it's essentially just like these results could be inaccurate, so treat them with caution, and sort of just make sure that caution is raised and that the awareness is raised that the hallucinations problem is still a problem. So check it, and then we also provide the sources. So like here is what I think, the bot would be saying, here's what I think, and then here are the sources from which I got the information, so that if anything seems suspect, or even if it seems fine, you go click into the sources and you can review that. And, you can even automate that review if you want. But then also another thing to help build trust is audits. So it's not really black box situation anymore for the most part for how these work, especially in a big, more systems-based approach. A lot of moving pieces, a lot of interactions. All of those connection pieces can be logged, and if any issues happen, you can very clearly demonstrate like the steps that happened and like what the communications were and what the prompts were and all that. And so anyway, there's a lot of techniques that you can do, that you can employ in moving from your small use case and nobody's aware of AI and trust AI to the point where people and individuals in your organization trust AI, can leverage it effectively.
I love it. And Mick, you've already been alluding to it, so let's get to the good one. Garbage in, garbage out. Talk to us a little bit about the data.
Yeah, so a lot of times, so we do these workshops. We'll talk about it afterwards. It's like 4 hours, but like the idea is like, okay, AI is very interesting, but how do we actually get value out of it? And very often, the result, or the answer is just clean up your data. and then automation is like relatively straightforward, but a lot of the problems that you have with intelligent automations or agents or AI, like giving improper results and things, is just like how is your data structured? How to ask good questions is like a real skill. How do you craft the context for an LLM is everything in getting good responses with LLM. So paying attention to your data really does matter a lot. And up until the point, like, you can very easily get over biased data. So overfitted data, that means that you train on like the Watson example, they trained it on like a small subset of potential solutions in a problem space, and it didn't capture the whole space. So that leads to a bias where it doesn't capture all the proper information and leads in improper direction. Anyway, so like your data matters a lot. Data is everything in context. So context is everything, and the way to craft context is good data and information processes in your organization. So like there's a huge focus put on that. And there was an AWS, I think it was AWS hiring also had a bit of an overfitting problem with their hiring process. They trained on like a set of resumes that the data set that they trained on was like more heavily weighted towards male. I think that was just because of their hiring processes previously, just sort of inherently led to them having like a higher concentration of males. And then if I think Levi, maybe you can even speak to this a little bit more eloquently, but like whenever people would submit resumes, if they were female, they were rejected most likely because the training data on who gets accepted had overwhelmed, like predominantly male resumes.
The data had the bias data was obviously driving that, but it was also kind of the black box of how's it actually working. So they weren't seeing that right away, and then they only found it later as they start to do some tests of like, seems like we're getting maybe some biased results here, and then they'd start testing it out, stick in a resume and then an identical resume that has something added in, like president of Women's Coding Club, and it's downgraded that one. That's not good. So there was probably a lot of other biases in there as well, just based on the past hiring that they didn't see, but they found like pretty quickly that it was downgrading all of them that used any kind of women-oriented language.
Yeah, and it's hard. Like it's hard to know how. Most people don't have a data science team, right? It's hard to know what's biased. What Amazon does, so these probably should have known. But but a lot of people don't have. Like it's hard to know what is or isn't a bias. What type of information is going to lead to a bias? Whether or not there is data in your collection that is going to lead to like a bias. It's just hard to know. That's why we do the workshop to help you figure it out.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned that not having the good market fit can lead to like 42% of failures in startups. This is one where there's even more stark data. McKinsey did a study of AI projects and found that 70% of AI projects fail because of data quality issues. So it is so critical.
Yeah. Focus on your data.
Absolutely.
I put together, I don't know if you guys knew, this is a little, this maybe date this video or this talk, but GPT-4o can now do like, really, really good image processing. And so I've got I like had it do a mug with Bitovi's logo and garbage in, garbage out. Like, how cool would that be? Anyway, it's very important, your data.
Oh my gosh, so many use cases. Well,
Yeah.
First, for our audience, I promise that we're going to get into Bitovi's kind of framework and methodology for avoiding these pitfalls, but it's really important to talk about the non-examples first, right? So we have one more, and Levi, can you speak to the importance of having a change management system in place?
Yeah, for sure. So, not planning for change management is definitely another way to make your AI project fail. And change management's critical on every project, but it can be especially critical on AI projects because there is just so much that can be changed or different um, than a typical project might be. It might be down to just like stripping out part of the workflow or like a complete change in the workflow of how people are doing things. So yeah, really critical. But yeah, I mean, all the items that I got on screen here, they're all important for every kind of project, but so much with AI. So, if we're, sticking to our theme here of how to fail, just jumping through those, don't have a vision, don't communicate your vision. Why you're doing the project? Don't bother with that. Better yet, don't even set a vision in the first place. Don't involve the people who are going to be using the stuff. Keep your leadership just like hands off, or better yet, publicly skeptical about your project. Don't let people ask questions. Just keep that information completely top down. Definitely don't train anybody. Just give it to them; they'll figure it all out. Ignore your company culture. Like don't check in on where people are at or what they might need for help with anything. They got this. Also, just expect everybody's going to be super enthusiastic. Don't plan for any kind of pushback or anything like that. And then lastly, just like wash your hands of the whole project as soon as you launch. There's no need to track anything long term or see how things are going. You're good.
I like it. So, all right, then Levi, I'm going to put it on you. If AI feels so risky, like what are the ways that we can mitigate those risks as we go? And so again, as promised, now we're going to try to set you up for success.
Yeah. So, a major part of the process is risk mitigation. And that's basically what we've been talking about all of today here really is, helping to ensure success by planning around those failure points. And we focus today on the areas of AI projects where, there's that intersection with UX, and that's a critical failure point. There's obviously also a ton of technical failure points. That's not like our core focus today. If you're interested in that, Mick would be super happy to chat with you after the webinar here. But yeah, before we get into the core of the process here, part of our kind of mindset with it is the scientific mindset. And yeah, Mick, you want to tell us kind of more about how you approach that?
Yeah. Let's talk about science. Let's talk about project management first. So at Bitovi, we approach our projects in a nicely structured fashion. We estimate our time. We break big problems up into smaller problems and estimate the time for those smaller problems. And when we provide an estimate, we also provide a confidence score. And generally, we say like roughly if it's not above, or if it's 80% or above confidence, then we're great. But if it's less confidence than that, then we should probably break off the pieces that we're confident about and take the pieces that we're not confident about and and do some science on those. So we essentially say, this is a very uncertain spot. Let's spend some amount of time. You sort of time box your efforts, form a hypothesis, get some results, and then use that result to reinforce your confidence until it gets up to the point you can bring it back into the project fold. And so, yeah, so you do science, you sort of, again, you want these quick feedback loops. So you understand, like, okay, well, this, we think it's going to be a good output, but maybe it's not a good output. Turns out it's not a good output. How do we make it better? You iterate quickly and you get that back up to the point where we say, we think we can provide really good outputs in this amount of time. So you can continuously improve your results. Just like do an experimental mindset and then measure those so that you can know how you're doing and you can adjust. You can't adjust if you don't measure. So so we take a scientific approach to our project management and our infusion of AI efforts as well. So where there's uncertainty involved, science can help.
Mick, you and I come from completely different backgrounds. Like, you're heavy on the engineering side, I'm on the design side. And you're thinking of, okay, like, let's do this, the scientific method, hypothesis, testing, evaluation. And that is, like, on the design side, we've got this, like, basically the same process of like ideation, testing, iteration. Like, that's core UX. And it's like, just, they mesh together so well.
Yeah, everything's a circle. Everything's
a circle.
You want to talk about our framework and like our approach? Sort of this is kind of baked in to like an overarching approach to design and engineering. I wouldn't say design. I'd say, like, planning and engineering. So planning and implementation.
Yeah, I mean, so this is our framework here on screen, and everybody watching, you're welcome to use this on your projects. We've adapted it from the classic double diamond design approach. Where you've got these alternating processes of divergent thinking, where we're coming up with lots of ideas, and then convergent thinking, where we're taking all of those ideas and refining them down into the best approach. So, in general, it's a way to deal with and refine ambiguity and lack of clarity into a clear path. So, taking a look through the process here, starting off, we'd have an opportunity where we're kind of initiating things. We'd work with the business stakeholders. We work with users, identify the needs, the opportunities, the pain points. What are those possible things that we could do? Who's it for? What do they want? And then with that sea of possibilities, we're assessing those against the market, and we're converging on defined goals and objectives. And ultimately, we want to come out of that process with clarity, specifically on what we want to solve. So basically, what is that biggest impact that we could have? And with that defined, we want to plan out exactly how we're going to do things. So we're thinking through, like, what can AI do here? How can we test our ideas? And then we're doing things like drafting non-functional flows that we can test, or doing a proof of concept. Getting feedback on the ideas and evaluating which ones are going to be the most viable. And then lastly, actually building it. And, the process here, looks like everything's the same size. Obviously, the build process is the longest, the largest of them. But, we're prioritizing the things into tasks, designing and building the interfaces, structuring the data sources, integrating with tools, all the things you associate with building. And of course, we're also setting up ways to measure the goals that we had defined earlier, so that we can evaluate our process. And this looks super linear. There's some overlap with this too, especially, we want to be starting to think about some of the technical solutions while we're also evaluating the market fit, because that kind of feeds into it. But it's, generally a left to right flow there.
Can I plug the workshop?
Yeah.
Can I plug the workshop? We do it. Okay. So yeah, we leave it on this this slide as well. So a lot of what we've been talking about is planning. So when you have a project, you've got to plan, you got to implement, and we've been talking about planning this whole time. So this is like the left side of what you see on the screen, And that's really what our workshop is for. Our workshop is essentially 4 hours, can be broken up for ease of scheduling into 1 hour segments. But essentially it's for a team of 8 to 12 people, business leaders in your organization who have a vision and an understanding of the value flow in your organization. And yeah, we do knowledge transfer from you to us, the knowledge transfer from us to you to get an understanding of both your business and you to get an understanding of AI and sort of the current space. And then we identify the use cases that have value to your business based on criteria we all work together to identify the KPIs and things like that. And then we vote on which one you like the most and you think is going to be most valuable. So sort of that like high value, low hanging fruit stuff, where to start small, iterate and grow. And then, and then we the one that wins, we outline a workflow. We identify the tools and the bottlenecks, the people involved, and the stakeholders and stuff. And you come away with like a workflow that has a lot of information that allows you to like really hit the ground running on implementing AI and getting value out of AI. And yeah, it all starts with the user experience. And yeah, if you want to make your users happier, then hit us up for our workshop. We can infuse some valuable AI stuff for you.
Thank you, Mick. And honestly, the thing that I love about the workshop and kind of the origins of it is that really the biggest takeaway from this webinar has been that slowing down in the beginning, that shift left, really make sure that your work is grounded in your end users. And I think the workshop is a really great way to force yourself to be honest about slowing down and taking the time to look at your objectives, look at how you're going to take in feedback at the end of a project, all those things. And so it's really exciting that Mick has been able to put together this workshop and get people on board. And he's worked with some really exciting companies on it. So if you're interested, let us know. And then also really quick, yes, absolutely, Mick, go for it.
Yeah, can I say also, like, to my detriment, I've ignored this. Like, this is the process I help create. I help put this together. Like, we have this practical framework, like do the planning, then do the implementation. And I just like, it's so easy to get excited about this stuff. It's like, well, let's just do the implementation. And then you get tangled up and inevitably I have to go back and do the planning bit and do the user flow, like go back to the process that we're supposed to go to, that we're sort of outlining here that we go through. Anyway, so like, it does matter. I've tried not doing it and I fail more often whenever I don't do it. So anyway, it's a good process that we keep coming back to. So we're just stick to it. Yeah.
Really easy to do that. And then if you're watching live and you have a question, please feel free to use the chat function. I am monitoring both of those. So I'm happy to relay your questions to both Mick and Levi. But right now I do have a question. Let's say like a team wants to add AI to an existing product. What's the first thing that they should do before writing a single line of code?
Probably not talk to the users. Let's not do that. Let's not figure out.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to echo that. Like, go talk to the users. It's such a basic core thing. Like, how else are you going to find out like what people actually want, what their needs are, their pain points, like what is going to be something that there's demand for?
It's so easy to hesitate asking people. Like there's quite often hesitation on like reaching out to the people who are doing the work, like they're busy, they're doing their work and things like that. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's worth reaching out there and like taking that little bit of time, and like the little bit of planning goes a long way, and talking to the people is the first part of planning. So like if you just like try to, but don't just, yeah, I mean, I guess like have a plan when you go talk to your people, but like we need to talk to the humans that are working with us so that we know how to give them superpowers properly.
Yeah, for sure. And then you both have alluded to like the intersection between like UX principles and just general like technical or good project management. So what's one, Levi, I'm going to talk to you first. What's one UX principle that you think AI product teams tend to overlook?
Yeah. I guess I would say you're not your user. It's such a core thing, such a common I guess, instance where you'll start working with a team and, advocate, okay, we need to talk with some users. and the feedback is like, we know what the users, I use this myself or something like that. And it's neglecting the aspect of things of like, well, the people who are building this tool, they're probably experts. They know the ins and outs. They know like all the decisions that were made in determining what was going to be done. If we're building an AI tool, these are probably AI experts. So really understanding that users are going to have a different perspective than the people on the team, different context, different knowledge, and not just substituting the team's knowledge for what people are going to do.
Yeah. Mick, do you have anything to add?
I'm not on that. I think specifically, I just like don't wait for perfection would be my response here. A lot of times teams will, we talked about this before, but a lot of times teams will like try to get to a level of accuracy with their results that really pushes the team to like have to invest more and like test more on. But like you could sidestep a lot of that by again having a good disclaimer, saying here's the results, here's our our sources, and then giving a good feedback mechanism to allow them to say like, this is actually rubbish. Like, okay, well then we know what to go change, as opposed to like trying to reinforce stuff without having talked to the real environment. You might be able to shortcut a lot of effort.
I love that. Yeah, those two, like those human touch points, like at the very beginning of the project, of course, but then also in that feedback component to make sure that you can iterate on what you've already created.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to give people superpowers. So if we give them powers and they're not helpful, then like they should be able to tell us that's not helpful, and we adjust and like we make them actually work. So yeah.
Yeah. So this is a big one. And I know both of you have dealt with this, but what's one piece of advice you'd give to a product manager trying to convince leadership that user testing is still essential, even when you're using something as powerful as AI?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I run into all the time here, but I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer when you actually look at the data. Like the cost benefit for this is just astronomical. The cost of talking to some users, doing a bit of user testing, like you're talking about maybe like a half a day to do some basic stuff. Obviously, you can take longer than that, but that's what you're looking at is kind of at an entry level. And then you compare that to all of the risk that you're taking of designing and building an application. It's probably going to take months, and launching that without having gotten feedback, and then the potential there that, oh, it's not a fit, or we've run into these like core issues that people aren't using it because XYZ, and all of that can be avoided with a few hours of upfront work.
Yeah. And then you don't risk an impact on your reputation at the end of the whole thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
On the LinkedIn comments, which we're streaming on LinkedIn Live. LinkedIn, we still love you, but everybody makes mistakes. And then I'm going to end us on a really fun question. If you had an unlimited budget and zero red tape, what kind of AI and UX project would you want to build? Mick, we'll throw it to you first.
Oh man, that's a hard question to ask me. Like it's all like I have big plans that involve tool building and self-enhancement stuff, but let's not talk about that. I think probably something a little bit more tangible would just be like a random note taker, like not just any random note taker, a note taker that allows me to take random notes. that like whenever I take a note, it categorizes it based on my organization strategy. I care a lot about how my virtual documents are organized, and I'd like to say like I need some groceries, or I'm doing this or that, and it sort of routes it to the proper document location based on what I already have, and just transparently like injects. Anyway, if I had that would be quite nice, because then I would have to do a lot less time. Oh, and like an example would be if I watch a good YouTube video and like, hey, this is a really good YouTube video, maybe I want to like post about this, hear my thoughts about it, and stuff like that. It'd be really good if that like went to a folder where I've got my upcoming like posts, drafts, and things like that. yeah, anyway, random note taker is probably going to be very useful for the world.
I like that, and I want to use it. Levi, what about you?
I love this question. It's so fun here, and I'm always so inspired by the just the fun little things that Mick is building too. But yeah, I mean, this question, like, I think like one of the fun things about it, it actually ties back to something we were alluding to earlier. So, what would I do if we had unlimited budget? Well, one of our cautions is to not bite off stuff with unlimited scope. So, that would be a caution to start. But yeah, the first thing that jumps to mind for me here is I'm working on an open source tool right now for design systems of, taking code and building it out into components where the designer can, just click a button in Figma and it updates the code without needing a developer to review it, while still allowing the developers kind of full control over the code and PR reviews and everything. Pretty cool. You can check it out. You can search Extractor, spelled EGG, Extractor. But if I'm thinking through like an unlimited budget kind of scenario here, I would be wanting to fill in kind of in that space of adding AI into building those components in the first place, like structuring things out, combining it with the functionality that we've got with Extractor, and then just like actually building your components in your preferred frameworks and whatnot to start with, having developers review that, and then you're set up to work with a tool like Extractor going forward. So
yeah, I would say that gap is a huge industrial problem at the moment, just like in the AI industry and the development industry. Like, great, you can like really do some cool POCs, but like, how do you translate that into a real code base, and how do you like then go through this real code base and integrate it and upgrade it instead of just starting from scratch? There's like a lot of integration points that would be very helpful, and I mean that would be super valuable. I'd use that a ton.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Mick and Levi, and to our audience. We really appreciate you. And honestly, we hope that you got everything you needed out of this webinar, right? You got a lot of like real world examples and what not to do versus that framework of really how to set yourself up for success. But today's session is just the beginning. So if you do feel like you need someone to like guide you in this process, especially in those beginning stages, we do have that AI agents workshop, and it's fully customizable, and it's a half-a-day workshop. Like Mick said, you can split it into parts that work for you as well. And we'll work with you directly to help you identify the high impact opportunities that you have to build a practical AI strategy that's tailor fit to your organization. So if you're serious about turning AI potential into real world value, let's discuss how we can do that. We're going to put both Mick and Levi's contact information up here on the screen. You're welcome to reach out to them. They love to chat, give a little bit of advice. But if you do want that full workshop, I'm going to throw the QR code up on the screen. It's in the chat as well. And we really hope to hear from you, whether it's feedback, how you're going to implement this advice, or we'll see you in a workshop very soon. Thank you so much. And thanks again to Mick and Levi. We appreciate your time. Bye, everybody.